when I first started down this path of like, hey, I want to retire, because I had this vague notion of, hey, I love the outdoors. I'll just go ride my bike or ski all day, right? Yeah, that sounded good on paper, but that's not reality.
There are some real good reasons to have some piece of active income as well. If your passive income is real estate, in downturns of real estate, you're going to decrease the passive income that you have there.
Baker, well, he loves making cookies and cakes. That's not a business, that's a job, that's a job. Some people fail going from that technician, I'm a good baker, a plumber, electrician, or whatever it is, to actually know I own a business. Owning a business, I need to think like a business owner, working on the business than in the business.
The person who owns this bakery probably didn't start a bakery or own a bakery because they wanted to own a business. They probably liked baking, and then it's like, oh, I grew a little bit, I have bills to pay, I have employees, there's all of these things that start to go along with being a business owner that maybe weren't the reason why you just got into it in the first place. Hi everyone, I'm Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Jens Nielsen, a commercial real estate investor, capital raiser, and certified high-performance coach. After a 27-year career in IT and telecom, he made a bold transition into real estate to build greater freedom and long-term impact. So Jens, like I said, that's going to sound so much better when we hear the story from you. But first, I just want to say thank you for coming on the show today. Thanks for taking the time out. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, me too, Jason. I appreciate the opportunity. I do look forward to our conversation as well.
Perfect. Well, let's start with just hearing more about your background. Tell us your story and kind of what got you to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. When you try to create a one paragraph summary, it always sounds a little like stilted or whatever. So as people may recognize, I got a little bit of an accent and my name does not sound American or English. So I was born and raised in Denmark, but left like 32 years ago in my early 20s. I left went to London, England first, were there a couple of years, and then went to the US in 1996. I can't believe it. This year is 30 years ago since I moved to this country. So I lived here longer than I lived anywhere else. With the same idea that everybody else. Hey, get your education, get a job, save in your 401k, and when you are 65 or 70 or whatever, you can retire. And I didn't have a college degree, so I ended up going to college here, got my undergrad and my graduate in computer science and stuff, and had a great career, like, as you said, starting out in telecommunication, then moved into computer system management and worked for from big corporations to small Native American tribes, moved around the country from the East Coast to the Midwest, to the Southwest, so to New Mexico and southwestern Colorado, and I've been out here almost 20 years and just fell in love with the outdoors and all those things. So my job was just a way to maintain my outdoor activities or hobbies, the travel and the biking and the skiing and all these things. But then in my mid 40s, I was like, wait a minute, do I want to do this another 20, 25 years? And the answer was no. And I was like, man, I got to do something that can decouple my time from my income, because that's the biggest problem we have as a W-2 employee, right? We earn a salary, and if we stop working, we stop earning money, right? And I think a lot of people don't really think about that idea. Well, you can create passive income through different means. And the way, what I found was real estate investing, right? So I started 10 years ago by buying smaller properties down in Albuquerque, New Mexico, some fourplexes and so on. Actually, in our first year, which was 10 years ago this year as well, a lot of milestones this year, but we bought our first couple of fourplexes and then 11 units. So, in 1 year we had 17 or actually 19 units, if I can do the math here, right? That really is like, oh my God, I just need to buy it. I mean, you got to have capital. We need to buy it, put property management on there, improve the property, and that's it, right? That really got me excited. And then that moved into, joint ventures, to syndications in 2019, 2020, to, more and more deals, and then into the industrial space. And I was able to leave my job actually in the middle of the pandemic. So that's coming up on 6 years here in 2026 as well. So that was very, very quick. So I do this full time. I'm a real estate investor. I'm also a high performance coach. I do some business consulting because real estate doesn't take all my time. I got to find some other things to do with my day. Right? So So I'm happy to dig into any of those areas, whatever
Sure.
seems interesting to you.
Yeah, well, you out passived yourself, so you made you made too much good use of your time with passive investments. You had to find something else to do because
Right.
you get bored if you don't have enough. Um, no, that's very interesting, and kind of I think maybe not an uncommon story in terms of the starting point in investing in real estate, where people are like, oh, how am I going to do this? How am I going to not work at this job forever and start looking at things to buy? You said you started with a couple of quads and an 11 unit. What did you when you started there? I mean, I think maybe I said it's unusual, but maybe I'm a little off on that. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to buy a house, or maybe I buy a duplex or something like that. But you got into the 17 units in the first year. How did that look for you? Were you really were you involved in the operating side of it at all, or were you really just got a good property manager and um, put them to work? How did you handle that kind of off the bat?
Yeah, and I get it, right. If you are new to it, it seems comfortable to buy a single family house because most of us, live in a house and we understand that, and it's kind of,
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to understand how to do it. But so at that point, I was living in southwestern Colorado in a small mountain town where property values were really high. It doesn't make many, you couldn't make them cash flow. Then I was like, okay, I got to get out of my local town and, an hour to the west, to the south or whatever. I could have found houses that may have made sense. Like, I don't want to drive. I don't want to be an hour away to buy one house. I mean, this is not going to scale, right? I knew enough about business and scaling that, one house at a time would take forever. And then luckily, I got around some people who had mobile home parks or apartment buildings, and they're like, there's no difference. Go and buy a fourplex. Go and buy something bigger because it's just a number of units, and you just buy, one loan, your one property, one tax bill, one insurance bill. And I was lucky to get kind of inspired by the right people. And that's also when real estate kind of podcasting really, as I was just listening to all of them and reading the books on it. So, so a couple of things, getting around the right people and finding the right brokers. So I got introduced to a broker down in Albuquerque, which was, it's a good 4 hours away. I was like, okay, it doesn't really matter. I don't want to be an owner operator. So if it's 4 hours away, I'm not going to be tempted to go there and fix the plumbing. That's just wouldn't happen. So I think that was a little bit of an actual, what do you call it? I fell into that inadvertently to not be an owner operator, because a lot of people get stuck in that and they're like, well, I don't want to pay 10% management fee. I would rather go and fix it myself. And they never scale because they're spending all their time on low value tasks. Right. So, and also, 10 years ago, you could buy properties in Albuquerque, fourplexes, four quads for $150K, right? I mean, it was insanely priced. Yeah. We had saved some money up, so 20-30K down, and you had a property, right? It just made sense. So, and then the second part of a question, was I involved in the hands-on? Not so much. I would go there, to see the property, and when we closed, I'd obviously be there. But beyond that, I trusted my property management company to turn the units and do the upgrades. And I think the interesting thing with that 11 unit we bought, because it was really cheap and it was not in very good shape. It needed a lot of work. So there I was heavily involved. We got it owner financed, and we got some, deference on the payment. So we plowed a bunch of money into that. And that's probably still my best performing deal because it's been refinanced, pull all my money out. So it's, infinite return on that. So does that kind of cover that?
Yeah, no, I mean, and it actually brings up, another interesting point is the creativity of that deal. Maybe worth diving into it a little bit. It just in the sense that you said you got owner financing and, have been able to since refinance and all of that. We had a phase. It's interesting. We had a phase of very low interest rates. And during those times, then, sort of the creative financing strategies don't work as well, because it's like, well, why don't I just take out this loan from the bank for, when it was 3%? So but at that time, 10 years ago, interest rates were probably about where they are now.
Yeah.
And also we have, a similar environment now where people are looking at creative strategies to buy real estate. And so I would love it if you maybe talk a little bit more about how that came to be, and sort of how you got the owner. I think a lot of times people are like, why would the owner finance that? It's an interesting, everybody has a different perspective, because I hear people say things about that, like, why would an owner do owner financing? And I think to me, there's many reasons. There's like, aside, maybe they're in some sort of distress, they need to get out of the deal and know that it won't qualify for bank financing, but maybe they just want interest payments. Like maybe they don't need a big chunk of money right up front, and they want the interest payments over time. So I would love it if you just talk a little bit more about how you structured that and kind of that early going, because I think 11 units is bigger than a lot of people start with, but I think your points about why you might start there are great.
Yeah. And I got to remember everything because it's 10 years ago. Right?
Right.
But, yeah. There was a couple of reasons. One was, I don't think it was financeable with the bank. You would have gotten very low leverage because, it needed a lot of work. Right?
Yeah.
It's, if I could only get half of the purchase price, then I couldn't buy it. So it helped the sellers, like, okay, if they can, finance 80% or 75% of it, they would have more buyers, right? Because they knew it needed work. And because when we were looking at it, it's like, oh man, and it was only somewhere in the $300,000, it was only $30K at the door, but it probably needed another $50, $75K to upgrade the units, right?
Mm-hmm.
New roof, new stucco, windows, unit upgrades, a lot of stuff, right? And so the creative piece of what we did was, thinking back, it's kind of crazy that they did that, but we did interest only. Can't remember, that was a year or something, with no payments. So we actually did not pay anything for like 6 months. That money just, and the interest didn't even accrue. That was probably a mistake on their end. The interest didn't accrue, right? So, when 6 months was up, then we started amortizing the loan, but nothing had accrued in those 6 months. We got 6 months of free money. We had the property, and all the money that we made got put back into the property, right? That's how we're able to turn the units and so on. So that was huge. And then I think we refinanced this one twice, because we had to get out of the owner financing within a year and a half. And then, when COVID hit and interest rates were 3% or 3.25%, I refinanced it again, right? And the payments really dropped and so on. So there was a couple of things there. One was, what is the motivation of the seller? They just didn't want to own it anymore. It was just too much pain for them, and they were just in there doing work, and it was deteriorating. And also, they didn't probably really need the money. They just wanted out of it, right? And we were a good buyer and so on. And then that creative thing about no payments for the 6 months was pretty unusual. And I think they made a mistake with that. Because I had to, when we started paying, they're like, wait, you owe, 6 months of interest. Like, no, we don't. This is what we signed. And that was back and forth with the title company and the attorneys. But eventually they're like, yeah, you're right.
Are you planning a remodel or construction project? Overwhelmed by the process? Over budget? Extended timelines? Strained relationships? We are all too familiar. At Lark Construction Services, we help homeowners and business owners take control of their construction journey, from reviewing bids and contracts to catching red flags before they become costly mistakes. Our Clarity Audit is a one-on-one expert review of your plans, estimates, or current progress, giving you the peace of mind and a defined action plan to move forward with confidence. Don't let confusion lead to costly errors. Visit larkconstruction.com and schedule your free call today. Lark Construction Services, saving you time, money, and stress.
Yeah. I mean, it does happen that way sometimes. There's just somebody misses something, and this is why people say you have an attorney review your contracts and all of that. But also sometimes the attorneys miss things. So it happens. But that piece aside, it's still like a great way to get involved in real estate in some way. And you're probably not going to get an 11 unit for 300,000 now. But still, like, the deals are out there to be had. So I think it's just people's willingness to think outside the box, and you might have to take on something a little bit more risky in the beginning if you want to go big like that. So I think that's a great story, and a great kind of the fact that was almost your starting point is to going that way. So over time, kind of transitions to bigger, and also you're a high performance coach. So when did that come in? I know you said you're sort of didn't need to spend all your time on real estate, that's the dream. That's what everybody wants, and started coaching. So how did that, I don't know if it was a transition, or how did that come about for you?
Yeah. So, I think the biggest challenge I had, right, was, so we started, we did some other smaller deals in the small mobile home park, other stuff. So I could see the money was coming in. I was like, okay, I can actually, if I can scale this up, I can make just as much or more than I was doing my W-2 job. But I had this, a mindset of somebody who'd been working for 25 years for somebody else. That is very hard to overcome, right? Yeah, logically it makes sense, but the mindset and the fear about stepping in to trusting yourself was so overwhelming that I wasn't making that decision. I was like, man, I need somebody to help me. So I hired, I had been part of mentoring programs that teaches you how to buy bigger deals. That's all great. You learn the mechanics. But what you don't learn is, well, how do you overcome the fear of the quitting and the fear of having to rely on yourself to make your income? So I hired a coach. There was actually also in 2020, in the pandemic, because everyone was freaking out. I was like, okay, this may actually be the right time, but I need some help. So I hired a coach that, helped me work through when is the time to leave? What are the, what does that future look like? Get the right courage and productivity and all these things. And it just really changed my life. I was like, I had done a little bit of mentoring on the real estate side. I was like, no, I want to get into high performance coaching. So I got certified in 2020 and started using those skills with the few clients I had. And then as that became more and more impactful over the years, I really scaled that up. But we're still doing the real estate and other things. So there's two parts of that. One is, my mission to help people live a better life, right? That's huge. The other piece is making sure that you have multiple streams of income, right? Because as we know, 20, 21, 22 were great years. And then, 24, 25 has been difficult years for buying real estate. And if I had to rely on real estate alone, it would have been less abundant than, okay, now I can actually scale up the coaching and the consulting to kind of balance the income, if that makes sense.
Right. I've talked about this before with on the podcast, but I mean, probably more so just in my own circle of friends and things, where there's a lot of talk about passive income, and it is important. You want passive income, and you want to grow your passive income over time, but ultimately, there are some real good reasons to have some piece of active income as well. And it's, one of them is just like you said, in downturns of if your passive income is real estate, in downturns of real estate, you're going to decrease the passive income that you have there. But also there's just the mental stimulation, things like I think most people, who are high achievers don't really want to sit around. That's not, it sounds nice for a period of time, but it's not usually something like if I won the lottery today, I don't want to go sit on the beach. I still want to do things. I still want to be productive with life. It'll be a much more comfortable, and optionality becomes even more prevalent, but still there's a lot of reasons to have something. And so I think that what this brings to mind to me is one of the nice things about what you did with the real estate portfolio is having that passive income allowed you to do something that you were passionate about. You didn't necessarily say, oh, okay, I'm going to go back and get another W-2 job. You were able to kind of stick with things that allowed you to kind of carry forward the mission that you want is to help other people. So do you think that kind of makes sense in terms of, do you see it that way as well? I'd love your reaction to kind of what I just said.
Yeah, absolutely right. When I first started down this path of like, hey, I want to retire, because I had this vague notion of, hey, I love the outdoors. Oh, I'm just going to ride my bike or ski all day, right? Yeah, that sounded good on paper, but that's not reality, right? I have a friend who's a little bit older than me who is retired, and he does all this stuff, but it doesn't really seem to be very fulfilling to him, right? Because it's about himself. And I think where fulfillment comes from is like the impact you have on other people, the world and whatever. And as I started seeing that, I was like, wow, first of all, I got to have something to do. My wife goes off to work and it's just me and the dog, right? And it's, what am I going to do all day? That's one thing. And then but much more important is like having the impact on other people. And I was just listening, everybody knows Tony Robbins. I was actually just listening to a podcast video on YouTube this morning when I was training in the basement, and he's like, I continue to find, he's in his 60s, I continue to find motivation through the number of people I can help and impact. And I do the same thing at a much, much smaller scale. But, I had a coaching call with a potential client the other day, and she's like, oh, I'm dealing with this and that and all these other things. And at the end of it, she's like, oh my God, I feel so relieved. I have new optimism and energy for everything that's going on in my life. How can I start working with you? It's like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? I mean, that feeling of helping another human being is so much more powerful than just closing another real estate deal. Right? Yeah, the passive income is nice, but and I think it's something that when we get older, there is that idea of all our experience and quote unquote wisdom that we want to maybe pay that forward.
Yeah, that's a great point. I hadn't really, I don't know that I had thought too much about that. I guess, or at least hadn't verbalized it. That is really a great point. I think, with in a lot of ways now that I guess comes out in interactions with my kids, but I think that, ultimately you have the, I don't know, obligation is the right word, but like, it's kind of how society maybe works this way less than it used to, 100 years ago. But I mean, ultimately, as you get older, passing life experiences and wisdom and hopefully motivation on to younger generations is can be a really, I think, fulfilling piece to your point, but also important to society and kind of the continued progress in trying not to repeat mistakes over and over again as much as possible and all of that. So hadn't really thought about it that way, but I do like that concept a lot. When you're coaching, are you typically working with real estate investors or just kind of anybody who feels that they need it? Do you have a sort of niche down to just real estate?
Yeah, good question. First of all, I can see behind you this is best dad and daddy and stuff like that. So your mission is also a little bit different because I don't have kids, right? So I get it. Parents with young kids, their mission is also, their kids and bring up good humans. So there's definitely something there that I don't have. So I can see how that shifts a little bit, right? So back to your question around who do I work with? Well, I started out working, only with real estate investors because that was where my expertise and so on was. But then I realized that a lot of people want to change their life, right? They want to do something different. They're just stuck. They don't know how to go about. So now I tend to work with, entrepreneurs who need to grow their business. That could be real estate. It could be, I have clients that I have a bakery client, I have property management clients, so stuff like that. People that want to grow their business and they may need executive leadership coaching or so on. And then also, individuals in leadership roles where they're like, I need to become a better leader in my organization, or I am done with this W-2 job. Help me get out of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What does it take to start moving out of this, right? And so on. So So it's basically it's people that are high performers, but they just need somebody to help them unlock that next level, right?
Yeah.
That's my client base, if that makes sense.
Well, and I mean, we I think real estate tends to get put in its own box in a lot of, but I mean, it's just another version of entrepreneurship or business ownership or something like that. So I mean, realistically, a lot of the skill sets cross, whether that's real estate or, I mean, certainly property management, the connection is obvious, but even bakery, I mean, it's all running a business, right? And I think a lot of people get into business, and they get into business because of something they're passionate about. They're like, I'm sure like the bakery, or the person who owns this bakery probably didn't like start a bakery or own a bakery because they wanted to own a business. They probably liked baking and were good at it, and like that's their passion point. And then it became a business, and then I think that's where you can get pretty bogged down by that. I mean, I've experienced it myself. I think you're like, oh, this is really fun to get to do what I want, kind of for myself. And then it's like, oh, I grew a little bit. I have bills to pay. I have employees. Like there's all of these things that start to go along with being a business owner that maybe weren't the reason why you just got into it in the first place. So I would imagine that a lot of that is it crosses over. There's a lot of, similarities between industry.
Yeah, I mean, any business, right? You're exactly right. The baker, well, he loves making cookies and cakes, but that's not a business. That's a job. That's a job, right?
Right.
And most people fail. I mean, not most. Some people fail going from that technician, I'm a good baker, a plumber, electrician, or whatever it is, to actually know I own a business. I'm owning a business. I need to think like a business owner, working on the business that I'm in the business, right? So my biggest shift with her was to start hiring, start documenting everything, not being in the bakery every single day, right? To move ourselves from that operation so you can own a business. And that's really hard for people because, just because you're good at baking or plumbing, you don't necessarily know how to run a business, and having somebody on the outside helping with that. The same thing with real estate, right? You could, if you start buying large apartment buildings, of course you can run every last thing of that, but some people are just too much in it every single day, right? Trying to control stuff and then just get super overwhelmed, and they can't do more than one deal and they're completely tapped out, right? So got to get the right professionals in there and the right help to really be able to scale and free our time up to do other things that we have passion around, right?
Yeah. It is. I mean, it's interesting having kind of done all of these things myself. Like it's interesting to have a shift in mindset from being a W-2 employee to being a business owner to, kind of it's, I don't want to say it's easier. It's just different. But like one of the things I always struggled with and still to this day is time management. Mm-hmm. People, when you have a W-2 job, people tell you how to manage your, like be here on these hours, and do these things, right? That's generally how it works. But when you leave that environment and then you're a business owner and you've got to, you make your own schedule. Like it's great. I prefer it, but at the same time, it's like, well, now I can just work all the time, or I'm burnt out. I'm not going to work at all today. And it's like figuring out that balance of how to do it. And I think that's where the coaching comes in. It's like, I've worked with coaches myself. The structure that goes along with a W-2 job is, it's instilled at a very young age, just with school. School has, your certain hours, you study this, someone tells you what to do. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. But I think understanding the differences, if you decide you want to be entrepreneurial, is an important piece of that. And as you said, it's, that passion that you might have for baking, not to pick on that client, but I think that's a good example, is like most people bake because they're good at it, and like these, it's a creative, it's an art essentially, and then it becomes a business when you want to sell those baked goods, and combining the two can be hard. So I think that the role of someone like yourself in coaching in those instances is really, really important, and helps, as you said, unlock some struggles for people, and sort of reinvigorate them for passion, the passion that they once had for what they were doing. So it's great.
No, absolutely. And especially, productivity, as you said, is huge. I think the biggest problems I see people have are energy, being consistent around the stuff they need to do in order to get the results they want, right? So that's productivity, but it's also energy, right? You have the right energy and motivation to do the work. And if you don't, then your productivity is going to drop rather quickly, because I don't really feel like doing it today, right? And then, the stuff starts failing, right? So working on, and that usually has to do with the deep purpose. Why are you doing this, right? Why are you a real estate investor or bakery owner or plumber? What's the why behind it? And most people can never really answer that question. So going back and really figuring that out, then you're going to have renewed energy to do the work, right? To do the work and grow it, and so on. And mainly when I start digging into that, it is because, hey, I want freedom so I can watch my kids grow up and go to their games and pick them up from school and whatever, if they have kids, right? Or if they don't, maybe it's like, hey, I have a deeper purpose to serve, or, create the best cookies in the world, or whatever, right? Or something like that. So figuring out to that, connecting to that is really important, because otherwise we're just going to run out of steam, and we may as well just go back and get a W-2 job and not, do all the hard work of being an entrepreneur, right? And I spent a lot of time really uncovering that. It's like, okay, you want to invest in real estate. Well, why that's important to you, right? You go like 7 levels down to really understand the driver behind it. And once that driver is clear, then engagement and productivity and all those things just tend to increase naturally.
Yeah. I of course could not agree more. The name of the show is Know Your Why podcast. So thank you for providing that perfect transition to asking you the question. You've talked some about the fulfillment that you get from helping others, but I do want to sort of ask the question directly. What is your why, Jens, and allow you to expand on that as much as you'd like.
Yeah. So I think the biggest why is my mother passed away in her early 50s from cancer, right? I'm 55 this year, so I have outlived her years-wise. And a big why for me is I want to live out, my gifts and my abilities and my potential in a way she never had the chance to do. Like, what's possible? What can I do? How can I have impact and significance in the world, right? So that's really what drives me, right? What is the significance and impact I can have in the world, right? Usually one person at a time.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I think being able to use a tragic life event as an inspiration to kind of build from is always very powerful. So that's fantastic. I love the way you've chosen to take that. So that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing. When people hear this and they want to connect with you, what's the best place for them to reach you?
Yeah, my personal website, jensnielsen.us. That's my site, and that links to my real estate, and it also links. There's if anybody wants a discussion or investing or coaching or mentoring and consulting, there's a link on there to schedule a free strategy call with me, or email me. My phone number is on there, so people can text me right then and there, right? So.
Jens, I'm not sure. Are you?
Yeah.
There you are. We had a little bit of a freeze there again. Tell me again that contact information. I don't know. For some reason, just as you were about to say it, we had a little bit of freeze. I'm not sure if it would have gotten recorded, but I want to make sure people have this and can reach you.
Yeah, the best way to get hold of me is my personal website, which is jensnielsen.us. And people can go on there and look at, my real estate, my coaching and consulting. And if anybody wants to get in touch with me, my phone number's on there. They can text or call me. Or I would like to offer anybody who want to go deeper to a free strategy session. There's a link there to schedule a free call there. And I love to talk to people about anything that's important to them.
Fantastic. We'll make sure we have that in the show notes so people can reach you. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. I enjoy the conversation. I think it's inspiring to see your drive to helping people kind of break through and seeing what fulfillment you get out of that is inspiring. So thank you for being here and sharing everything that you did. Folks listening, make sure you connect with Jens. We'll have the website in the show notes. Please like, rate, and review the show so we can continue to get more great guests. And as always, thank you for listening.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?